Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad program webinar for the fiscal year 2017. I am Reha Mallory, a program officer here in IFLE, and later you will hear from Danielle Richardson, who is a senior program officer here in IFLE. We're very happy to present to you today, and we're very excited about this competition season. And so this webinar will introduce you to some of the key topics for the GPA program and also give you a key pointers as you go about putting forth a proposal. A couple of housekeeping matters. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and we ask that you just hold your questions until then. Please ask any questions that you feel are kind of general to everyone and to the program, as we're going to be joined by quite a few of you. If you have some questions that are very specific to your project or to your proposal, the email address will be provided at the end. The email address is, just so you'll have it in advance, is gpa@ed.gov. And so again, that's gpa@ed.gov for your questions that are specific moving forward. And also we'll have the Q&A session for you for you to ask any questions that you have that you need further clarity regarding what we've said today. Hopefully, if you can hear me, you've called in for our audio number that's listed on the screen, as well as the passcode. This number will be on subsequent slides, so that if you're disconnected for whatever reason, just hold off for a second and it'll be on the next couple of slides, so you'll always have that at your disposal. Okay, we're going to get started. So hopefully you are calling in for the right program, of course. This is the Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad program. Today we're going to discuss a couple of topics. One, of course, the program purpose, the funding for this project, the eligibility for applicants, the varying project types. There are 4 project types, and we'll discuss those. The project phases, the financial provisions allowed under this grant, the selection criteria, which I'm sure all of you are very excited about hearing. This is the means that the reviewers will use to score your application. The selection process, so the next steps in the process, and any tips that we can give you to help you with your application. So let's get started. And so the purpose of the GPA program, of course, is to provide support in overseas training, research and curriculum development, in modern foreign language and area studies to support advanced overseas language training projects. And what we mean by area studies is that it's a program of comprehensive study of the aspects of society or societies, including the study of their geography, the history, the culture, the economy, the politics, international relations, and languages in that host country. So, and also, keep in mind that participants can be working in a variety of areas. So the participants are the actual people who will be going on the project, not the person who is putting forth the project or the institution. The participants are the K12 teachers, the faculty, the undergraduate students, and those people can be working in a variety of interdisciplinary areas. So for fiscal year 17 grant competition, we estimate, and of course these are estimates, but we estimate the list, the amount for short-term projects to be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 for short-term, and the estimated amount of an award would be anywhere from $80,000, $81,000. For long-term projects, the amount could range anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000, and the average size of the award is usually around $185,000. So, eligibility. Who can apply for this grant? Okay, eligible applicants are institutions of higher education, state departments of education, private nonprofit educational organizations, or a group of those 3. So it could be, for example, a institution of higher education partnering with a nonprofit, or a state education agency partnering with a nonprofit. So any consortium of those any mix, if you will, of that group. Now the participants, again, these are the people who will be attending your project. Our first kind of the threshold is that they have to be a citizen, national, or permanent resident of the United States, and also currently employed full-time in the United States school system, an institution of higher education, so faculty member, or a local education or state education agency. So also, if they are, those participants have to be a teacher, a faculty member, an administrator, a student, if they are junior and senior, or an idea behind the junior and senior students is that we want to give experiences to those people who are going to go into the teaching career. So those are the pre-service teachers. They're almost getting ready to enter the field, but not quite yet. So this experience will give them some experience before they enter the classroom. So the project types. There are 4 different project types for the group projects abroad. There's a short-term seminar, there's a curriculum development project, a group research or study project, and an advanced overseas intensive language project. And so when you are applying, you want to make sure that your project fits into one of these categories concisely, so that that you're being judged according to what you are proffering in your proposal. So we'll take those kind of and dissect those individually, starting with the first with a short-term seminar. So the features of the short-term seminar, this one is to integrate, and obviously they're all group projects abroad, so they're very similar, but there are some very key differences. But in that, the project features for the seminar project is that it promotes the integration of international studies into the social sciences and humanities throughout the U.S. school systems at all levels. So here we want to increase the cultural and language competency among your participants, and also we're focusing on area studies such as their culture and really getting to help the teachers or the participants really understand that culture. So it's an actual seminar in learning that host country's culture. Curriculum development project is different in that, as the name suggests, the participants are really working on a curriculum. They're going to find firsthand resources, materials, artifacts, books, documents, things of that sort that they can use as instructional material when they are in their classroom. And the idea also you'll see between this one and the next one, which is the group research or study, this one really involves a dissemination of the material throughout the United States. So in your project, you want to highlight how you're going to disseminate your information or the information that the teachers have learned, their varying curriculum projects or their curriculum material throughout the United States. And so just going back, so you can kind of see the seminar and the curriculum are the same in this regard. Both of them require a minimum of 4 weeks in the host country. And so the grant performance period is the amount of time you have from the date that you're awarded to complete everything. So your pre-departure, and I know these terms may seem a little abstract, and we're going to talk about those later, but your pre-departure, your in-country, and your follow-up or your post-departure activities all have to be completed within this 18-month period. So that's the grant performance period. So it's a minimum of 4 weeks in a host country. 4 weeks, if you are there 4 weeks, you're allowed 12 participants plus 1 project director for a minimum of 13 people, and so on. So there's a differing number for 6 weeks. There's a different number for 8 weeks, as you can see on your slide. Again, this is for the seminar and the short-term seminar and the curriculum development project. The maximum grant award for those are anywhere from $100,000 to $120,000. Please be certain that when you are in your project, you're not over the $125,000 amount, as your application will be ineligible because you've exceeded the amount available for those 2 projects. And also, too, on the GPA website, we posted some sample abstracts for you to look at, just so you can kind of see an idea of what has been done before. So in years past, we had one grantee that scored exceptionally well in the list of funding grantees, and it was, for example, just off the top of my head, Middlesex Community College, and they put together a successful application for a 4-week program in Cambodia, with 50% of the participants being pre-service teachers, and the other half were K-12 teachers. So if you get a chance, definitely go over to the GPA website and take a look there for abstracts or ideas. So the group research or study project, this is the third of the 4 projects. This one is designed to undertake research and study in the culture, obviously outside of the United States. Here there's a minimum of 12 weeks in the host country. The grant performance period, again, is 18 months, just as the previous 2. This is required, there's 12 weeks of training there, 3 participants, and a project director is the minimum. And so you also want to have language proficiency, at least 1 semester of intensive language training in the related area, just because you're able to be there for a longer amount of time. And then the last one is what some of you may have seen in previous years, our GPA long-term project. And so the long-term, just as its name denotes, is also a longer-term project to really help the participants to dive into the culture, to the language aspects in the host country. And so what's needed for this one, is, I guess kind of the flagship, is that the participants have to have completed at least 2 academic years of training. And so while they're there, they are learning the language in a more in-depth way than they would be able to receive here in the United States. Again, they've already received 2 academic years of training for this type, and so they're just going to really learn the indigenous language of the host country and have a maximum use of their the local institutions and personnel in the host country. And so really on this one, you really want to highlight the idea of being able to take advantage of the advanced language training opportunities that are not available here in the United States. So you're going on the project and you have to be in the host country, because what will be available in the host country is not something that you could be able to ascertain here in the States. So those are the 4 project types. And so the maximum grant award for the long-term project is a maximum of $250,000. And this one, of course, is more, because as you'll see in a couple of bullets ahead of that one, the last one is the grant performance period is up to 24 months. And so you can be in the host country for up to a full year, academic semester, a trimester, or summer in the host country, but it must be a minimum of 8 weeks. And so the amount available is obviously more because of the potential to be in the host country for a longer amount of time. All right, so let's talk about the project phases. And so I kind of highlighted this a little bit earlier, but I want to talk about, when we talk about the performance period of it being 18 months for the first 3 or 24 months for the last long-term project, these are the phases for which I referenced. So there must be a pre-departure orientation, so a minimum of 16 hours. And so think about it in the respect of these are either pre-service teachers, so these are undergraduate students. These are teachers who may not have had experience in the host country, and so you want to give them an orientation to essentially orient them to the culture. The worst thing you can do is kind of have them go over there and they experience culture shock. So this is a way of kind of letting them know what to expect. You're going to talk about the project and what's expected of them, how it will go, and everything from obviously the curriculum that they're developing or the area studies or some functional language that they're going to learn. You may even want to do some team building while you're there just to make sure that it's a successful trip for everyone. do some cross-cultural training, anything that the group will need, and you'll be able to really figure out what that looks like as you continue and put your application together, obviously your project. But it should be at minimum of 16 hours of an orientation prior to them going on the trip. And so here's an example. Keep in mind this recording, again, this webinar is being recorded. And you'll also be able to have a sample of the slides posted online. And so if you can't see it, I don't know if your eyes are all probably much better than mine. And even though I put this together, it's small. So you'll have an opportunity to look at this a little bit later. But this is a sample of a pre-departure orientation. And what you'll notice is the dates, kind of who is giving the presentation, who's going to participate. And it really is detailed, and it breaks up into 4 different sessions. And so the pre-departure orientation doesn't have to be a marathon of 16 hours, which is kind of hard. And again, that's a minimum of 16 hours. If you find that there needs to be more, by all means, please make sure that you do whatever is needed in your project. So if 30 hours is needed, there, as you see in this one, there was 4 different sessions leading up to it. They had a session once a month for the period of time leading up to the experience. It concluded in June. So if that's needed, then please feel free to do that. But you'll want to have in your application a pre-departure orientation sample. Also, keep in mind you're not bound by everything that you put in your pre-departure orientation, because it may change once you receive the list of your participants. If your participants turns out to be some K12 educators who have been to the host country before, or conversely never been, you may want to add some more workshops and things of that sort to accommodate your group. So that may change, but we do want to see kind of what your thoughts are and what you're initially trying to put together. Okay, so the next session, phase is the overseas phase. This is the actual trip, right? This is you going to the host country and having the experiences, the cultural component, the language component, the area studies component, of course. And so here you want to have a very detailed itinerary of what you're planning on doing. It won't be enough to say you're going to go and then you're going to kind of figure it out and see what happens and see what comes what may. There is a lot of money that is being asked, and so the reviewers are going to want to see how you plan on spending that money. The academic lectures that you'll have, who's giving the lectures, where will the lectures be held? You also want to put if there's any type of technology available, and we'll talk about some of those things when we discuss the actual scoring of everything. But just suffice it to say at this point, you'll want to have everything that is that lets the reviewers know what you'll be doing in the host country. So if you'll do any field trips or cultural activities, you'll want to talk about that, how you're going to get there, who's going to be leading those groups, and any travel arrangements and accommodations that'll happen during that time. And so here's a sample of the in-country itinerary. And again, it lays it out, and this is something that you'll have an opportunity to look at before. You'll have an opportunity to look at in the slides. But the travel days are listed, and so it says where you'll be departing from, where you'll arrive, the time, and you may not know this information definitively because, of course, you have not gotten the plane tickets. But this is, of course, is a sample. It's a very detailed yet rough draft of what you want to put together. It should be obviously realistic. If you know that it's going to take you 12 hours to get there, you want to make sure you account for that. But you may not know as it states here at 10 p.m. So that may not be something you know definitively, but it should be listed. And so here also you have the rationale, which is a very good thing, and then they also have the objectives. And so moving forward, you'll see kind of where they it's very clearly laid out, and they have objectives that are listed, and they have each line item in their itinerary speaks to an objective that goes back to their initial reason for going on the experience. And so that's just an added benefit because it really lets the reviewers know how everything ties together. Okay, and so the third phase is the follow-up phase. This is the end of the seminar. So now you're at this point, you're back home, and now you are, now this speaks to what are you going to do with the information that was learned in the host country. So you may have an end of the seminar evaluation where the teachers kind of get together and exchange ideas and exchange curriculum or how you're going to disseminate. Remember before I discussed the dissemination efforts that you'll have for the two project types, but this is where you'll kind of have everything together. This is the culminating work of what you did. Any future outreach that you had, any staff development, or anything of that sort. Okay, and so here is the follow-up phase sample. And so this kind of lays out a timeline, and of course this is kind of self-explanatory, but it allows you to see what some other projects have done and the activities that they've done since upon their return to the States. And so next we'll discuss the financial provisions of the grant. So I've gotten a lot of emails about what the funding could be used for, and some of the allowances. And here is a rough draft, and everything is also laid out in your application. So you'll definitely want to take a look at that, read that carefully. I realize that it is a very large document, and I do somewhat apologize for that, but we wanted to give you all the information in one fell swoop in one handy little document, so it is very detailed. But funding can be used for lodging and meals, obviously, right? So your hotel, the food while you're there, the actual travel, the travel to get to the host country, and the travel while you're within the host country. But keep in mind, travel to the host country must comply with the Fly America Act and the Open Skies Agreement, which simply says in short that you will use a U.S. carrier to travel. Now, when you're in the host country, if you're traveling from one area to the next, if you're taking a plane, you may not be able to fly with a U.S. carrier, and that's fine when you're in the host country. And so there's some allowances there, but travel from United States soil abroad will require a U.S. carrier. And so, there's a couple very, very narrow exceptions to that, and those can be taken at the time when you are ready to travel. But suffice it to say in your application, you'll want to make sure that you are letting the reviewers know that you will comply with the Fly America and the Open Skies Agreement. Also, funding can be used for educational materials. We talked about before the artifacts or things of that sort for the participants. It could be used for that, any honoraria or meeting space while you're in the host country, local administration fees, maybe, and that can include anything from the rental space if you're partnering with a institution abroad, then any type of fees at the institution, so that it can be used for that, and any host country evaluators. But again, the GPA program does not provide funding for in-country expenses, so your expenses for your pre-departure and your post-departure phases cannot be paid with funds, with the GPA funds, and that's why the host country evaluators can be used, because they're the evaluators abroad. If you bring an evaluator kind of with you, they would be, if they're not a participant, that would be considered a in-country expense. So now the fun part, I'm sure this is the part everyone has been waiting for. This is essentially where the scoring comes in, and so this is what you'll be scored on. Keep in mind that Ed employees, we do not score the applications ourselves. We use a team of subject matter experts in that world area to score the application. Some of them have participated in GPA programs in the past. Some of them have been project directors or participants, but they are people who are experts in the host country to evaluate your project. And so these are the selection criteria that they will use. This is the rubric that they will use to score your application, and this is the guidance that we will give them to help them to score. And so I'm going to turn this portion of the selection criteria over to my colleague, Tanya Richardson, who will discuss this portion further. Tanya, are you available?
Reha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's begin with the selection criteria, but I want to preface this by saying it's extremely important, as Reha mentioned, that you go through the application booklet carefully. There are several examples of, there's several areas of guidance about the selection criteria that's extremely important to the development of both the short and long term. So it's extremely crucial that you take advantage of all the information that's outlined in the Federal Register Notice, as well as the directions given to you in the application booklet. So we use both, for both components of the program, short and long term, we use the same selection criterion. And as you can see here, we will go through briefly the main elements of the selection criterion. So the first one being the plan of operation, which is worth 20 points. Again, the same selection criteria for the short term as well as for the long term. And here's where you kind of give the reviewer an idea of exactly what you're planning on doing when you're in country, as well as how the impact will go for the instruction, how the language, how the culture, everything that you're going to be doing over the next 4 to 6 weeks if you're doing a short-term seminar, and if you're doing a long-term advanced language seminar, what your plan is for the actual advanced language portion of what you're doing. Now, please keep in mind for the long-term participants that they must do a pre- and post-language assessment. So if you are looking at, just for example, if you're looking to recruit advanced speakers in Urdu, you have to do a pre and a post. And here's where you would talk about the plan of what you're planning on doing as far as assessing their language skills in the pre-departure part of it as well as the post. And you would discuss that in your plan of operation. As you can see here, it's also a good opportunity to do an introduction. You talk about exactly who you are as an applicant. The overall design, as I mentioned here before, you're going to give us a step-by-step account of who you are as a applicant in this section of the criterion, worth 20 points. And I just want to point out both the plan of operation as well as the evaluation point, as well as the evaluation plan are our two most heavily weighted criteria. So it's extremely important that you nail those sections down as much as you can, because we have, as you know, those who have been successful and those who have not been successful in the past, those two components, if there's anything lacking in those areas, they tend to be where the evaluators, subject matter experts, tend to see gaps in your proposal in either the plan or in your evaluation. Okay, 20 points. The next one being the quality of key personnel. So please keep in mind that since all the funding must be spent in country, you cannot, and I repeat, you cannot pay your U.S. domestic personnel any funds from the Fulbright federal funds, meaning that you can't pay them you can't pay them a stipend while they're here in the United States. You can't pay them an honorarium while they're here in the United States. But if they're traveling with the group, of course, you are taking care of their expenses in country. But we'll talk about that as we'll go forth in the budget. But the quality of key personnel, you talk about the project director, their training, their field experience, any kind of support staff that's on task, especially in country. You want to make sure that your support staff and your project consultants in country have the knowledge base, have the actual information they need to assist you in developing a strong in-country program. You want to make sure that you use either strong academic programs. You want to make sure that you use strong language specialists, strong support in country. And here's where you would discuss that in the selection criterion. You can also talk here as well as if you are hiring any consultants in country, you're going to make sure that you have all the relevant key personnel in this particular section. And I believe the instructions in the application does a lot for you to, I believe it's 3 pages per key personnel for their vita. And I have to verify that with Rita. I'm not sure if it's 3 pages, but we do give you a recommended amount of pages that we do recommend that you include in the application for each key personnel.
Yes, that's correct, Danielle.
Okay. Thank you, Rhea. And as I mentioned before, it's extremely important that you have a well-established program in country as well as a well-established program as far as pre-departure at your home institution. Although you can't use any funds to fund the pre-departure seminar, you can use funds from participant costs to help fund, or you can use some sort of match toward the pre-departure costs, but you cannot use any federal funds to develop your pre-departure program as far as consultants, as far as airfare, as far as anything dealing with the actual domestic portion of your program cannot be used with federal funding, but your in-country can be. I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun about the the budget and cost-effectiveness section, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that as far as separating the quality of key personnel and any costs associated with those key personnel members. Okay. Rhea touched briefly about the allowable costs for the budget and cost-effectiveness section, also worth 10 points. And like I said before, it's the same for both short and long-term. Although long-term has can have up to $250,000 as far as the funding, it's only worth 10 points as far as the budget and cost-effectiveness section. Please keep in mind that you should give a detailed account as far as the timeline of how the funds are going to be spent. If you are paying large fees as far as academic training in country, make sure that that's clearly explained in the budget notes. You want to make sure that your budget gives as much detail as possible. Specificity of detail is extremely important when you're talking about in-country costs. If you are mentioning costs that will be converted to the in-country currency, you want to make sure that that's extremely clear as far as your budget and cost-effectiveness section about the actual in-country currency conversion and how that translates to your U.S. request. Also, you want to make sure that any costs associated with the participants as far as things of like entrance fees to museums or cultural excursions or things of that sort, that is completely documented, that it does link back to the academic portion of the program or the faculty development portion of the program. You want to make sure that the readers understand why it's important that you've included, for example, if you're going to the Great Wall of China, why that's in your budget, or if you are taking a safari in Africa, why that portion is important to your overall program. And that goes for both the short term and the long term. And I'll just say this, we will be compiling Q&A for all those questions related to the selection criteria. So if there is, as Rhea mentioned, if you have a particular question that's geared toward your program that's more of a scenario question, make sure that you send an email asking that in its entirety. But we're going to be compiling all of the Q&As into a separate document that we'll be sending out to all of those who registered for the webinar. Okay. And here included in this section is a a really good example of an outline budget, of how budgets are designed. Now, as I mentioned before, specificity of detail is extremely important when you're developing your budgets. For the long-term projects, since you have up to 24 months of performance period, you want to make sure that you outline your budget for if you are doing a summer long-term extensive seminar, as well as either a semester, trimester, or even a 12-month seminar. Make sure that you outline exactly what the costs are associated for if you are doing multiple seminars within your long-term performance period. It should be very, very clear as to the costs associated with the actual language training, as well as any costs shared by the actual participants. This is a really good example of how those columns are separated and accounted for. Okay. So as I mentioned before, along with the plan of operation, the evaluation plan is worth 20 points as well. So 2012, we were tasked by our accountability office to make sure our programs were actually being considered to be a value-added asset to the both for the in-country as well as the post-departure component. So we implemented something called our performance measure form. And as you can see in your application, and I'm just going to fast forward for a second to the performance measure form in the next slide. Here's where you give an example of your goals and your objectives, in your activities and your measures as is outlined in your goals. I'm sorry, I'm just making sure. Yes. So you're covering both your goal statement, your performance measures, and your activities. If you are successful in becoming funded, that's when you will give us more of the data indicators, the due dates, and your targets. But that will be outlined in your application booklet. So I just want to go back to the evaluation plan. And I do apologize if I'm skipping over the selection criteria, but I want to make sure that I cover all the key points. As I mentioned before, the evaluation plan, also worth 20 points, is where you would talk about the effectiveness of your project. You will clearly articulate your goals and talk about how measurable your outcomes are, both quantitative as well as qualitative. You will talk about how the effects of the project will have at your home institution. If you are using this language program, if you're using any of the activities to leverage a academic program, whether it's a major or minor, you want to make sure that that's clearly understood in your evaluation plan. It's always good to include an external project evaluator, although the grant will not pay for a home evaluator. You can use the funding for a in-country project evaluator. And I highly encourage you to work with the local institutions in-country to find the best match as far as your external project evaluator. Please keep in mind that you cannot use the funds, as Reha mentioned, for any of the home evaluations. You will also talk about in this section, let's see, things that will, any kind of data that will be collected or analyzed. You will talk about any of your methods, any timetables of the evaluation process, any other tools that you'll be using, whether you're going to be doing surveys or analytics, anything of that sort will be discussed in this evaluation plan. If you're a long-term applicant, you'll talk about the rubric or the design of your pre- and post-departure language in this selection criteria. And I know it's a lot to discuss, but you want to make sure that it's extremely important that you capture all the elements, all the key components of a well-designed evaluation plan from the onset to while you're in country until when you return back to your home institution. You want to make sure that you have a plan of making sure that it had the most impact for the program itself. As I mentioned before, with the PMF form, it gives you, you can see here in the sections for the PMF form, we're only requiring you to fill out the goals, then the measures, and then the activities. And then, like I said before, if you are funded, you will come back and fill out the data indicators and the baseline targets. Now, keep in mind, this will be, for those of you who have been funded before, this system is attached to our IRIS system for all of our TARS, reporting, and data collection that we ask all our grantees to use. So if you are an applicant that will end up receiving funding, you'll be working with the key personnel staff here in IFLE to make sure that your PMFs are approved before you leave country. But we'll talk about that more if you are funded, as we'll be doing additional webinars to go over all the PMF information for all of the grantees. We also include a really good example of a PMF as it's outlined in this example. Now, please keep in mind, this is only for information purposes only. We don't want you to become too ambitious in your goals, because you want to make sure that your goals, your measures, and your activities are in line to what you're proposing. It does us no good if you're too ambitious in what you're proposing and you can't really reach those benchmarks. So you want to make sure that you align all of your goals and objectives to be something that you can actually achieve during your project cycle. So, for example, if you are doing a short-term seminar, you wouldn't have a project goal to implement a full advanced language program once you return back to your domestic institution, because it's really not obtainable in that time frame. You want to make sure that your plan, your activities while you're in country are linked to what you're going to be measured on. So I would ask you to use your own discretion as to how ambitious or how you develop those goals ultimately, but you don't want to be too ambitious when you're looking at the goals, because it's a red flag for our review process. Okay. The GPA measures are already built into each application. So, for example, based on the number of participants who are actually on your program is where we collect that GPA information. And we're required by law to collect the GPA Accountability Act information. So that's for your information. As we go forward, you'll see here the measures that we collect for both long and short term. The next selection criterion would be the adequacy of resource. Although it's only worth 5 points, this is where you would tell us exactly how well linked you are as far as your contacts in country, your resources you're using, whether or not you're using a certain type of curriculum-based model, whether you're asking for some sort of language assessment or language cultural immersion. Here's where you're going to be talking about the resources that you've actually secured in country. And I would really advise you to link this resource section along with your actual activities. So you want to make sure that the application is connected all the way around. Although it's worth 5 points, it's extremely important that you give us an outline exactly of how you're going to be taking care of your resources in country. The next selection criterion is the potential impact. Although it does sound very similar to the plan of operation, you want to really talk about the impact of your program and how you're going to leverage that when you come home. The impact for if you are using K12 teachers, the impact that they're going to be actually experiencing in country, or if you're using, or if you are having undergrads who are juniors and seniors, their impact or the overall impact for all that are involved in the program is where you would discuss that in this particular section. The culture, the current future of the program, anything that you can leverage and have a multiplier effect is where you're going to discuss that in this particular section of the potential impact for the program, worth 15 points. The next selection criterion is the relevance of the institution development. Again, you're going to link your mission and goals and objectives. You're going to talk about exactly how your overall mission at your home institution is aligned to you being abroad. For example, if you are looking at the global impact of your home institution as far as your overall 2020 plan for realigning your whole globalized plan for humanity, social sciences, that type of thing. You want to really talk about the importance of going abroad, how that's going to ultimately, how you're going to use that impact abroad, come back and do certain work when you come back home, or how you're how you're going to leverage the whole aspect of what you're going to be doing while you're in country. Although it's only worth 10 points, it's extremely important that this trip reads more than just a travel cultural immersion junket. You don't want to, lead the reader to believe that you want to just go abroad for 4 to 6 weeks and just travel and just soak up the culture. You really want to talk about the overall impact of what you're going to be doing when you return to your home institution. Okay. Again, the next selection criteria this is all really interrelated to what we're asking of our applicants. This is the need for overseas experience. If you're looking at a certain demographic to bring abroad on the trip, you want to talk about the actual overseas experience for your K-12 demographic. If you're looking at K-12 teachers, or if you're looking at undergrads, or if you're looking at the, hoping to, get more advanced language speakers in a particular language, you want to talk about the overall need for the experience to be abroad. And again, we have a pretty good reference guidance in the application packet. And as much as we can, we will give you as much guidance through the Q&A, but this really is where you're going to talk about your story, your need to be abroad, and that's worth 10 points. The actual research you've done, the reason why you've chosen this particular world area or this particular country is when you're going to talk about this for the need of overseas, for the overseas experience. Okay. So for 2017, we have several priorities, and for our absolute priority to be eligible for the program, all of our applicants must look at the the regions of the world as far as Africa, East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Western Hemisphere. We're looking at those particular world areas only. If you look at areas that aren't described in the absolute priority, then you would not be eligible for funding. So I highly encourage you to take a look at the NIA as is written. For our first competitive priority, we're looking for the short-term projects from select institutions. We are looking at MSIs, community colleges, new applicants. You receive a maximum of 3 points if you meet that competitive preference priority for all short-term applicants. For the competitive preference priority number 2, we're looking for the long-term projects if you are from MSIs, minority-serving institutions. And here is the language as it relates back to the competitive preference priority for number 2. It's actually located in your application and in the Federal Register. I highly encourage you to take a look at the actual language itself. As far as the definitions for community college, MSIs, they're all outlined in the NIA as well as your application booklet.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate it for that guidance. And so also just to let you know, kind of a note about the absolute priority, the specific geographic regions of the world. Please, as you are thinking of the countries for which you'll travel, the State Department provides the U.S. Department of Education, and specifically our office, IFLE, the International Foreign Language Education Office, with areas that are available to travel. So, for example, if there is an area or the country that you are intending to travel, at this point, if it's located on the State Department's travel advisory, meaning that they're not advising U.S. citizens to travel, your application will be ineligible at this time. And so you want to make sure that if you're going to an area that may be on the advisory or has some type of conflict going on, if you do propose travel to that area, the project will not be reviewed. Now we have had, just a note to moving forward, we have had applications where, because again, you have 18 months to travel, we have had applications where when they submitted the application, when it was reviewed and when it was scored, the area was available for travel and everything was fine. There were no travel advisories. But right a month before or X amount of time before they were to travel, then an advisory came about. And we handle those cases on a case-by-case basis. But to start and just know, specifically as it relates to the absolute priority, obviously every area that you see listed on that slide, and I'll kind of go back just so you'll see it. So every area here, as Danielle mentioned, Africa, East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, Western Hemisphere, Eastern and Central Europe and Eurasia, and the Near East. You'll note that everywhere except for Western Europe is mentioned. And so you're pretty much set there. So the disclaimer as well is everywhere except for Western Europe, in addition to any place that there is a travel advisory. And so going back, moving forward to competitive preference priority 3, there is, and this one is for short or long-term projects. So you'll notice that priority number 1 is for short-term projects, and that is a maximum of that was for a max of 3 points for short-term projects. And then for priority 2, this is only for long-term projects. Priority 3 is for short and long-term, and priority 4, which is the inclusion of K12 educators, this one is for short-term projects. So you'll notice in the beginning when we talked about the amount of points that were available, there were 100 points available for both applications, just based on the selection criteria. But then there's also an additional 4 points that are available for short term, and then 3 additional points that are available for long term. So you'll want to keep that in mind as you're kind of putting together your application and the amount of points that you can possibly receive. So these are the priority points, but keep in mind there have been applications that have been successful without having received any priority points. So it doesn't, so you know, it's not mandatory. What we don't want you to do is kind of fit your application into the priority points. You know, just you know, taking K-12 educators just because you'll receive priority points. But if in your design of your project, then that makes sense, and that's what you really want to do in earnest, then yes, please, you know, have those K-12 educators as that priority, and then of course you would receive the points for that. But not to you know, just to, you know, hey, let me find a community college to partner with just so we can get those priority points. We want the application to be a good faith effort and something that is true to what you want to bring forth. So next we'll have so of course you kind of had a list of a list of like the pre-departure orientation and the itinerary, and was able to kind of look at that. So before one second, let me get to the next. So now we're going to look at, so now you've applied, you've had the selection criteria, you understand the different project types and everything. What's next? What are you looking forward to? And so this is where we'll talk about the GPA selection process. So the first thing that happens is that you submit the application, obviously, and then the applications are screened. Of course, we look at the eligibility, that being, of course, as I discussed, that being going to the right location. The panel of experts will review the application. They'll make comments on your application. You will receive those comments whether you're successful or unsuccessful, so you'll have an idea of what the reviewers, how they fared and how they viewed your application. And in the event that you are not successful, then you can use those comments to really anchor in on what you need to do moving forward should you decide to apply for fiscal year 18. So you'll get those. After the comments and everything has been received, then there'll be review. The successful applications will be then sent to the U.S. embassies and the Fulbright commissions abroad, and they'll do a review for the feasibility, for security sensitivities, or things of that sort. And so then the recommendations from that will be sent to our Secretary of Education, who will review the list, and then we'll send the final approvals and the award recommendations to the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board. All right, so, and all of that happens no later than September 30th of 2016. So you'll get notice. Not exactly sure of the date as of yet. We're hoping sometime in the summer, but at the latest, you'll be awarded, just because that's the end of our fiscal year, the September the 30th. So if you're thinking about traveling, you may be, if you're awarded sooner, you may be able to hit the ground running and travel this summer if you're ready. If not, you can plan for the fall, if you're a long-term project, or even in the summer of 18. So let's talk about some tips to kind of get you, as you put your application together. Please review the abstracts of funded grantees and successful proposals that are listed on the website. Those allow you to kind of see what other people, as I said before, what other institutions and other projects have done, not so that you can copy it, obviously, but just to kind of give you an idea of what was successful in the past. Feel free to contact funded grantees for information and assistance. For example, if you're in a state and you've seen that another state has been successful and you have some relationships with them, feel free to reach out. They may be able to provide you with some assistance, or you may even be maybe willing to partner with you. You also want to review thoroughly the FAQs on the website, which has a lot of information to share. You want to have a management team that really is dedicated to this actual grant proposal, so that you guys can share information and discuss things. It may be someone, and even not only on your project, but there certainly may be someone at your institution that have applied and been successful at the grant. And so you may want to contact the project director in another office who can give you some insight, and you may even be able to, if they're willing to, read their comments and see where they are, given you guys are in the same institution. And so to find out who's been funded in the past, obviously you can go to the website, but then you can also contact your sponsor program office, who may be able to give you that information. As Tenyo and I mentioned before, you definitely want to review the Federal Register and grants.gov for detailed information. I know the application is long, but we really do have a lot of information there so that everything is at your disposal. You want to also request letters of support from your partners abroad and also here in the United States if you have them, and you want to include those in your application. So to write your proposal, it does bear repeating, although I hate to take up your time in saying this, but you do want to address all of the selection criteria. You'll be surprised how many times something is just overlooked. And so, of the selection criteria, you want to make sure that you have an answer and a clear plan for everything that is listed, and you do want it to be very, very detailed. The reviewers, although we at the department may be able to kind of look at your application and kind of guess what you meant to say, or be able to fill in some blanks and kind of have some inferences based on your application, but the point is that we're not reading it, right? And so someone who is just picking up your application, who's never talked to you, even if you contacted us and kind of gotten some information and kind of some pointers, it should be such that someone can pick up your application and know exactly what you meant, because you're saying it concisely and thoroughly. And so you want to write clear, measurable goals, your objectives, your outcomes. Everything is clear and laid out to describe exactly what you're planning to do in the host country. As far as your budget, you do want to have very specific and a detailed budget. You want it to be by line item. So, if you're planning to do anything, you don't want to group, for example, travel in one fall swoop. You want to outline, this is the cost for plane tickets, this is the amount that it's going to cost for us when we're in the host country to get from A to B. This is the cost of the admissions when we get to B. This is the food that, this is the cost of the food while we're there. This is our per diem, things of that sort. So you want to make sure you have all of that laid out. Please avoid any type of acronyms that your institution may use on a regular basis. Understanding that someone who's reading it may not understand things that may be common to you at your institution, and of course, grammatical errors are something you should avoid. So use persuasive descriptions of how your project operates. So it should read, this is your proposal, this is your persuasive essay, if you will, as to why you should receive funding under this grant project. So you do want it to be persuasive so that we can really get a sense of what you're trying to do. So think about it this way: you're really convincing the panel that you should be funded, and you're speaking from your perspective as far as what you're wanting to do and helping them to see your purpose. So as you all should know by now, the application is available on grants.gov. You'll want to, if you're writing in grants.gov, you may want to type up your information and then constantly kind of save and back it up just to avoid any type of computer issues. There's also guidance in the project, in the proposal, as far as how to name files. If they're not named correctly, if they have any special characters, anything of that sort, it may be pushed, it may not be able to be uploaded. And so you want to make sure that you are following that instruction. So backup, save anything that you wrote, just to make sure that if there are any issues, you have a backup. And so again, you will receive the reviewer's comments, and you are encouraged to reapply. And please, please, please do not wait until the last minute to submit. We do have applications that we can see that definitely come in. The deadline is at 4:30 on the deadline, 4:30 on the dot. On March 7th, we do have applications that come in at 4:29. It would be a sobbing moment if you realize that, for whatever reason, sometimes it takes a moment for large files to upload. And if you've waited till that very last moment and it didn't upload, there's nothing that we can do here at the department to have your application reviewed after it's met the deadline. It really is something sort of an act of Congress, if you will, almost literally, to get your application in. So you definitely want to have that submitted beforehand. And we know that these things take time, right? So we know that, getting your contact information in the host country and putting your budget together and sending it to your sponsored programs office and, making sure that you've met with and talked to and conversed with the right people and putting your project together. We realize that takes some time, but please build that into your time to submit. March 7th will be here very shortly, and I just don't want anyone's application not being scored only because of technical time issue. We know that you put a lot of work into it, and we want to see it. All right, award notification. Again, the end of the fiscal year is September 30th of the fiscal year, so this year will be September 30th, 17. Scores and comments will be sent. For successful grantees, be prepared to hit the ground running. If you are able to travel once you receive funding, then you're more than welcome to do so. You'll have 18 months for short term, 24 months for long term to travel from the date that you're awarded. So if you're able to go at that point, then feel free. Here are a couple of websites for you to check out, and again, this will be available to you. This will be available to you, but if you want, feel free to write these down, and we'll have a link to those. But if you want to subscribe to the IFLE listserv, that's available. the panel review application submission, if you want to be a panel reviewer, not just for this year, it's for the following year. Keep in mind, you would not be able to be a panel reviewer for your application or for your panel for obvious reasons, right? We want it to be fair. But if you're thinking about doing it for next year, then feel free. All right. So the GPA website is listed. If you have further questions moving forward and you just you have something that you want to ask that is more of a personal or more program project specific question, feel free to email gpa@ed.gov, as I mentioned earlier. And so this will be we'll be answering questions individually based on when they come in. So please understand that when we get them, we did. If you put the email address in, we got it. We will be getting to it very shortly. We'll definitely make sure you have those as soon as you can, understanding that you are attempting to apply. So, all right. So now for the Q&A. If you have questions, there is a raise your hand feature you'll see to the right. It's a little hand right next to what looks to be a 1987 video recorder, little button. So I'm telling my age here. If you have a question, feel free to click the raise the hand button and type your question in there. You can send the question directly to me, to Reha Mallory, and then we'll ask questions. Understanding being a K-12 educator, understanding the importance of wait time, I will wait just a moment to give you time to formulate your questions, and I'll be looking forward to seeing those. Again, the questions that are general enough, I will be answering those, but the questions that are a little bit more specific, we'll ask that you send that to gpa@ed.gov. And so I received a question that asked, what are the other deadlines throughout the year for this program? And so this program is an annual competition, and so we only have one competition per year, and so this is the competition for the fiscal year 2017. Some of you who have been following this competition for a number of years, the date has changed drastically, if you will, throughout the year. There has been an announcement as this one in January. There's been announcements in June. And it all depends on a variety of factors for which are wholly out of our control. And so this year, of course, the deadline is March 7th. Not sure about the deadline for 2018, but we aim to have the deadline, just so you know, we aim to have the deadline as earlier in the year. So in the event, as I described before, you're able to hit the ground running, you can travel in that current year. That's our goal, but we're not able to have that done every year. So we do it as soon as we can, hopefully giving you the maximum amount of time to travel. So another deadline throughout the year is the project measure forms, the PMF. Those are due after you are awarded. Then you'll receive an email from the program officer as far as letting you know when those are to be put into the system. But the complete, if you will, the complete reporting is due once you return back from the host country. So I'll continue to wait for questions. Someone had a really good question. They asked if the objectives from the pre-departure orientation that was listed in the itinerary, were those for that particular project, were those linked to any type of pre-departure phase? And so for that one, yes, it was. That one was linked. So you'll notice in the presentation that there were a number of goals that were linked, and those for that project was linked to their project measure form. So another question was, can the project director be paid overseas? And the answer to that is yes, only for the overseas phase. It cannot be used to pay for any type of salaries or anything prior to them leaving. So a copy of the PowerPoint will be available. Again, this is being recorded, so you will be able to have a copy of that in addition to the slides. And so just a point of clarity, there was a slide that said that the project director's in-country expenses can be used with grant funding, and apparently there was something that was read that the project director cannot be paid. No, so the project director can be paid in the host country. They cannot be paid in country, so there's a difference there. And so the GPA program cannot fund indirect costs for this project. Only direct costs are allowed. And so someone is asking for the PowerPoint to be sent via email. I can definitely send it through email. I have a list of your logins. I'm sorry, your email, and so I can definitely send those if that's needed before before the presentation is posted. So that won't be a problem. I'll just make myself a note to send it to you all. And so as far as the guidelines for the amount, the question is it possible in the future that, do you have any guidelines for how much teacher participants can be asked to contribute to the cost? There isn't a bright line as far as how much teachers can be asked. But keep in mind, if, teachers are participating, this is the summer, we don't want the cost to be so exorbitant that they are not able to go. But we do understand that because of the budget constraints, that they will be asked to pay something, right? You just want to be conscious of the teacher's budget and what they may be able to pay for. And so in the past, the long-term advanced intensive language training program has been able to be used for a number of years. And so it was a grant that the grantees could use for up to 4 years. Because of funding is not exactly, is kind of unknown at this point, what we're doing now is to have it only covered for a shorter amount of time, because this is the amount of time that we know that we can have funding for the project, in short. So I'm not sure if it'll be able to be funded for a number of years. That's something that we'll just have to wait and see, if you will. And so another question asked, do participants need to be interested in a career in teaching for the long-term projects? And so as you'll notice in the GPA, all of the participants have to have, if they are juniors or seniors, they do have to be pre-service teachers. So they will need to be those who are interested in the career and they have expressed interest in going into teaching. And so the idea behind faculty or K12 teachers, even pre-service teachers, as I said, is that we want them to be able to take what they are, the information that they've learned in the host country, the training, and to, if not apply it the moment that the Monday, if you will, that they get back from the host country, but very shortly thereafter. Okay, and so a couple of the questions are a little bit more program specific, and I'd encourage you to send them to the, just so you don't have to type them again, just feel free to copy your question and send it to the GPA@ed.gov. A lot of the questions also are in the actual application. Some of the shorter questions are in the application, and so feel free to look at that and to find if you find that useful for you. So hopefully you're able to, hopefully this webinar has been something that you can really take a hold of and really has answered a lot of questions for you. And so if you have any additional questions, feel free to email us. But we thank you for participating, and we look forward to looking at your applications. Have a great day and good luck, and we'll see you March 7th, if not on paper. Thank you.